All right, so in this last screencast, we're going to look at how to actually create the citations that go onto your works cited page. And for many students, this can be the most frustrating part of compiling their final paper because as you've probably gathered from looking at some of the previous screencasts in this activity, there's a lot that goes into each citation within a works cited page or a bibliography page. And there's a lot of different kinds of sources out there. Everything from interviews that you can conduct to print resources to web pages to even tweets. I mean, there's a way to actually cite tweets and things like that. And so there's so many forms of media now that you could be citing that there's all these varied approaches or all these varied bits of information that you have to put into a works cited page. I will say that back when I was doing research in college, in this one way, it was actually easier for me because I was usually using books because I had to just go to the library and take out the books on my topic. So I didn't have to worry about how to cite a web page or how to cite an online interview or a YouTube video or anything like that. I just had books. And so it was much easier back then to learn the actual formatting for how you cite. And you knew you needed your author, you needed your source, you needed the date of publication, and that kind of basic information. Well, now citations have gotten much longer and much more complicated because of all these other forms of media and texts that we have in our society today. And so teachers no longer expect you to learn what goes into a bibliographic citation. Instead, we expect you to look it up because there's just too much information these days. And so for this stage of the game, you really want to think about spending some time, setting some time aside for yourself to actually look things up so that you can create each citation for every single source that you've included in your paper. Now, because the internet is so convenient, a lot of students like to just open up a browser and search what they need. So let's say, for instance, that you wanted to cite something directly from Eric's Engaging Ethics textbook and you wanted to use that in your paper, and that would be perfectly fine to do, and you would go ahead and you would talk about that in your paper. But then when it comes time to write the works cited page, you're going to have to create a bibliographic entry for Eric's book. So I might go into Google and write something like, how do I, whoop, hold on. So I'm having some trouble making my screen window larger, so I may have to move it around a little. I apologize if I make you dizzy. So no, we're not looking up how do I ask a girl out. We're looking up how do I cite an unpublished book, because that's what Eric is using in our class. He's using a book that he wrote, but it's sort of a living document because he changes it every semester to add new things to it, take things out of it. And so it's not a static publication at this point. He may publish it someday. I hope he does publish it someday. But for now, we're looking up how do you cite an unpublished book. And I see here something called the Purdue OWL. And the Purdue OWL, it's the online writing lab. It's a resource that comes out of Purdue University. And many, many of your instructors are probably going to tell you that this is one of the best places that you can go to learn about style guide issues and formatting things for citations. And so I'm going to click on that. And it takes me to their website. And so I'm just going to have to scroll down to see if I can find the question I have, and here it is. How do I cite an unpublished manuscript or a document in MLA? And so it's just going to give me the instructions for what kind of information I need to include, and then it's going to give me an example of what that might look like. And so when I actually apply that to my own citation, then I would get something that looks like this. And I'm just going to make this bigger so you can see it. I've got Eric's first name and last name. Last name always goes first in a bibliographic entry. I've got the name of his book. Because it is a book, I italicized it so readers would know. I've got the date of publication, and when you're using MLA, they always want the day of the month first, and then the month, and then the year in all 4 digits. I put today's date down because it's a living document, like I said, and Eric is always adding to it and updating it. And then it wants the name of the institution where it's housed. And since Eric is a faculty member at Front Range Community College, I just put Front Range Community College, Colorado. And that just lets the reader know what this document is, where it can be found. Now I put TS in here, that means TypeScript. It just means that it's not a published book yet, but it was written in type. Now if this were on my actual works cited page, I would want to find a way to indent it like this. This is called a hanging indentation. And if each entry has the top line kind of hanging over to the left like this, it makes it easier for a reader to scroll through and find the sources. Okay, let's look at another example. What I pulled up here is the article called Self-Control is the Key to Success by David Brooks. A lot of you read this article. This was one of the many articles that Eric had referred to in chapter 3 of Engaging Ethics. And so there's a lot of live links to these articles within our D2L course. You can find them if you search around. I found this one by going to the discussion. I think it was writing prompt number 11 where I had embedded a lot of these links, and so I just clicked on that and it brought me here. So I would come to this page and say, okay, well, I'm using this article. Let's pretend I'm using this article in my essay. I've referenced it. I've done some in-text citations for David Brooks, but now I need to create a bibliographic citation for this at the end of my essay. And so how am I going to go about doing that? And you have a couple of options. You can go to Google and do a search for how do I cite an electronic, magazine or journal article, or you could go to our Front Range website and you can click on academics. You can go down to our libraries. I'm going to go to the Harmony library since that's the library that I use. I'm going to go to databases, and what comes up is this page that a lot of you are familiar with, the e-resources page, and it says help with citations. Well, that is exactly what I'm struggling with right here. So I'm going to click on help with citations, and I get these two wonderful links that come up. One is style manual help. So you know how you used to in high school get like a little spiral style guide, and maybe sometimes you get these still in college in some of your other classes. We don't have one for this class because there's a lot of style manuals that are free online, and the one that the library is using is Pooter Online Writing Lab. So again, that's the OWL at Purdue, which we were just visiting. So obviously if our library is putting this up there as their style manual, it's a pretty credible source. So you could go into the Purdue OWL. You could say, okay, well, I'm interested in MLA because that's what we use in English classes. I'm interested in formatting and using the style guide. I'm interested in creating a works cited page, and I want to know how to do that for something like a electronic source. So I would just go into that and it would take me there and it would tell me exactly how I would need to do that. Your other option, which is even easier, is to use something called EasyBib. So you can click on EasyBib, and because this is a paid-for resource, it wants my library card information. So I've entered that. I'm going to submit it. And here I am. I'm at the EasyBib website. And you can watch how easy this is. It truly is a very simple process. So I'm going to go back into my article, and I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to go back into this, and I'm going to paste in the URL, and I'm going to tell them to go ahead and cite this. And right now it's searching for the results. So I paused it for a second there because it did not, I copied something wrong into here, and so I just went back and repasted it in, and so it says please confirm or modify the information below. And so it's telling me that the article title is Self-Control is the Key to Success, which is true. It's telling me that the website title is SF Gate. This is the URL. It's asking me if I want to display the URL, yes or no, and it defaults to no because MLA no longer requires that we do. Used to be the case, but we don't anymore. And so it says, okay, it hasn't given me the information for when it was electronically published, but it does give me the information for the date that it was accessed, which is today. And so there are a few things that it hasn't told me. For some reason, it hasn't told me the author. Maybe it couldn't find it. It hasn't told me the publisher or the sponsor, and it hasn't told me when it was published. So I'm actually going to have to go back in. I know it's David Brooks, and I see here that it was published on Tuesday, May 9th, 2006. So I'm going to go in and put, it was published on May 9th. It was May. It was 2006. I know that the author is David Brooks. And you can look over here and you can see that it's actually formatting it as I go. David Brooks. I'm not going to worry about the publisher or the sponsor because we already have SF Gate in there and that's the website title. And so, well, let me change my mind about that. I'm going to take a quick look back and see if it's obvious to me who the publisher or the sponsor is. I guess I could go to the home page if I really wanted to know. But I think it's just SF Gate. It's San Francisco Gate, as I believe the sponsor is the same as the title. And so I don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the citation. And so here it is. Citation is added. David Brooks, Self-Control is the Key to Success. They've put it in quotes because it's an article. It's not a book. SF Gate. This is the date that it was published. This is the date when it was retrieved. Now, something that it hasn't included that I think is a little bit of a problem, I'm going to go ahead and come out of this and I'm going to paste it in here, is that they didn't put print or web. Since it's a web source, you need to put web at the end of this. I'm sorry, I'm wrong about that. Totally forget what I just said. They have included it right here. I just didn't see that they had put the actual access date on there. And so web is in there. The reason why web is in there is because we opted not to put the URL in, which was good because those URLs can run on and on and on for a long time, and that's kind of tedious for the reader to have to pay attention to. So web lets the reader know this is a web source. If this were a book, you would put print at the end and the reader would know I have to go to the library and actually find this book. But because it's a web source, the reader knows they could go in and search it and probably find it pretty easily. Now I'm going to cut it and I'm going to put it up here. And the reason for that is because David Brooks comes before Eric Salahub. Remember, we need to use alphabetical order for the works cited page. And so, oops. Okay, I had to play around with the formatting a little bit there, and you'll probably have to do the same thing. You want it all to be uniform. I think the reason it looks a little funny is because I'm using two different fonts. Remember that works cited goes at the top. Yours wouldn't be as big as mine. I'm just making it larger so that you can follow along. And again, I created this hanging indentation there so you can see that I have two sources on my works cited page. I have David Brooks, I have Eric Salahub, and then you would just continue to list as many sources as you have. And so that's how you're actually going to go about building or creating your works cited entries. And if you get stuck on that, you can always let me know. You can certainly visit a campus writing center. They're very adept at helping students create works cited pages, but definitely set some time aside for yourself. Give yourself at least a half an hour or an hour to build your works cited page so you don't get frustrated trying to create it in the last few minutes, because you can run into some little glitches, just as I did in the screencast along the way. So thanks for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.